Yes, praise God. You know, I don't like going on vacations. I just don't, because each time I go on vacations, I have to leave my comfortable home. I never found any hotel or Airbnb place that would have as comfortable of a mattress as I have at home. I don't like putting my stuff into bags and carry them to the car, from the car to the hotel and back, carrying all that stuff around. Always forget things, always miss some stuff. And then I have to go to the store and buy some. I don't like traveling that much. You know, when I go to vacation, I usually sit behind the wheel wherever I go, to Cape Cod or somewhere further south, Florida, for instance. Don't like going to the plains, just don't like vacations. However, I desire go on vacations. And here is the paradox or tension. On one hand, I hate going on vacations. On the other hand, I always go, and I enjoy it, and I desire to go. Do you know why? And here is why. This is the little secret about my family. I never, in my married life, went to the vacation without my children, without my family. And sometimes I know some people criticize me and they say, how come you just don't go to the vacation by yourself and enjoy yourself? I don't get it. I just don't get it. Why would I go to vacation by myself? I have other things to do. The only reason why I go to the vacation is because I like spending time with my children and my family, and that's my desire. I know that if I go to the vacation, I will endure sleeping on some substandard beds in the hotel. I would endure carrying my bags. I will endure traveling on the roads, in traffic, all that unpleasant experiences. But at the end, the reward is I will spend time with my family, see them happy, enjoying time together, eating meal together, going places together, experiencing certain things together. That's the desire that gives me power or motivation to endure these unpleasant points. Now, today we are finishing this big topic for the month, path. And we started at the beginning of March talking about narrow gate. Remember, I talked about getting to the highway illegally, to I-90. And then we were talking about road less traveled that I discovered, nice path to New York, nice road to New York, and that's the Jesus, not a wide way, but a narrow way. We were talking about Jesus being only salvation, being only way, being only gate, being only solution in our lives. And I want to finish today with this last installment, kind of summarize it all and put it all into perspective, tie it all together. And that is the Jesus track. So the name of this, the title of this installment is the Jesus track. The Jesus track. And I wanted to use one verse in the Bible, one of the very known verses in the Bible, beautiful verses of the Bible. I preached on this verse many times, and I always circle back, always come back, because it's so deep and rich. And it has 3 points in it. Just for the simplicity, I call them drop it, drag it, and do it, the Jesus track. How do you go into this journey? How do you go to the vacation? How do you go to this traveling experience? Is you need to drop the convenience of your home. You need to drag the burden of the stuff that you're taking with you. And you actually need to make a decision to do it. This summer, my daughter came to me last Friday, I believe, and she says, let's plan for a vacation together this summer because the time is coming and it's short and everything is going to be resolved. Let's make a decision and plan for this summer so that we can spend time together. I hate vacations, but I desire to go there. And I hope that by the end of this message, you leave this place knowing that in order to get to your desired destination, you need to drop something. You need to carry something with you, and you need to actually do it. 3 things that I want to focus on. It has something to do with discipleship, because this is the verse about discipleship. And as you know, someone said that salvation is free. Discipleship will cost you everything. And that is a very good phrase. Let me just to kind of, because the 3 points that I made here, it's for simplicity. But for those of you who are a little bit more advanced, let me just give you or put it in different ways. Drop it is like undergraduate degree. You leave your home, for instance, or live your careless life, and you become more or less of an adult. Drop it. Drag it, it's like your graduate degree. Graduate degree is a little bit different because when you get your, those of you who have graduate degree, you know what I'm talking about. It's like you cannot finish it. It's like, oh my gosh. And you have all this question, do I really need it? I mean, look at all these people who never went to school and they do shitrack and they make a lot of money. And I'm sitting in the school, wasting my time. Do I really need it? Drag it. And do you know that some people went to the graduate degree and never finished? Because it's like dragging this stuff. You almost like lay down on the running track and you're like, carry me over the finish line. I'm not sure if you ever experienced this. You know that sometimes I talk to the graduate students and they're like, that's it, I don't want to do it anymore. And I have to encourage them and motivate them and inspire them like, no, please, one more semester, 2 more classes, and you will be over. Drag it. And then there is do it. Do it, it's like postgraduate degree. I don't know if you have postgraduate degree. It's like you are way beyond being burnout. You just do it, like going through the motion, but you do it. And here is the big overarching idea. In order for you to go through these 3 steps, my friends, you probably cannot even go through the drop it if you don't have this vision of what's going to happen once you finish this whole thing. Because see, we are very short-sighted. We don't have this. Okay, just to give you in plain terms, we were working yesterday on some of the rooms downstairs. And so we're going home, and I said to my son, Dan, I said, wow, that was an awesome job. And I asked him, you know, Dan and John, in the Bible we have Peter and John couple. In Lakeview Church we have Dan and John. And they were working on this room, like painting. I don't even know how many layers they paint this room with. And they were painting and doing all these ceilings, and a lot of work they put into this stuff. That's how they know how to do things with their hands. They learn it in the church. If your children don't know how to do things with their hands, send them to church, and they will learn. If you have a daughter who don't have a boyfriend, or if you have a son that doesn't have a girlfriend, send them to church on Saturday. Guys, you don't get it. This is the best stuff. Anyhow, so we were driving home, and I said, hey, Dan, did you envision when you first started to paint this nasty green color that we had there, that this room will come out like this? And he said, did not have any idea. I just painted it. I did not have this vision as to what it would become. And here is the big point that I want to emphasize this. In order for you to go to the undergraduate and push yourself through the graduate, and then finish the postgraduate, you need to see the end result. Other than that, you're gonna drop out. Other than that, somewhere in the middle of semester, you say, you know what, I'm done with it. I hate the school, I hate the professors, I hate the education system, I don't need it. I will just go ahead and become a mechanic. Nothing against the mechanic. I'm just saying that some people think, I'm just gonna go ahead and become a truck driver. I'm just gonna go ahead and become a plumber. I'm just electrician, anything. But I don't need this school anymore. Because you need to see the end result. I wanted to move into the biblical sense. Remember, Jesus was actually telling a parable about a guy who found a treasure in the field. And he took all the resources that he had, all the borrowing power that he had, all of the things that he could sell and liquidate to raise cash, and bought this field because he knew that if he buys this field, he's going to have a treasure. And so he invested everything that he had into this field because, I mean, everybody looked and they're like, what are you, stupid? You're buying this field? What do you need it for? And he's like, no, but you don't know something that I know. There is a treasure there. When I go to school, people said, what are you, stupid? It's a waste of time. Your best years, you're wasting in school, doing the 6 letters, writing assignments, taking quizzes, reading textbooks. What do you need it for? Well, you don't understand. I go for school not because my mama sent me to school, not because my daddy told me that. I found a treasure, importance of education in my life, and I'm going to finish it no matter what, even if I have to drag it. And so it's not about education today. It's about taking the Jesus track. I'm just giving you examples so that you understand the same thing in following Jesus. You have drop it, drag it, and do it. And essentially, this is the 3 most important truths about Christian life that we are talking about today. And all of you know it. Some of you who've been to church or know it by heart. That's fine. I'm going to just kind of give you some pointers today so that we refresh the memory and summarize all these discussions that we have throughout this month. And the reason why it's important to talk about this is that Okay, let me just put in this way. This verse that we are going to talk about today, it's a progression. In other words, you cannot drag it if you don't drop it. You cannot do it if you don't drag it. It's each step, each phase that follows after another builds upon each other. And that's why it's important to talk about this. And the most important point of all this discussion is at the end, there is a big reason why I desire to go on vacations. I hate to go on vacations, but I desire because I see the benefit of it. Even though I have to sit 3 hours on the highway to get to that Cape Cod, even though I hate those hotels, even though I hate the crowds, and I hate the overall experiences with all these different things, but the end result worth it, makes it worth it. The Peruvian theologian Samuel Escobar said, Christian discipleship is not just about belief, but about action. You can believe whatever you want, but if you don't translate this into the tangible steps, decision, and actions every day, what's the point? If I don't have tangible victory in my life, in my marriage, in my day-to-day function, what's the value of my beliefs? That's what he's trying to say. So we're talking about the Jesus track. And this is the verse. I'm going to give you a little bit of context so that you understand where it came from. But this is how it goes. Jesus said to his disciples in Matthew 16:24, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Now, again, this is about progression. First and foremost, we need to have a desire. You know why I gave up on guilt tricks in church? Because we can push people to do certain things based on fear and guilt. And that's what religion is good about. You know, I can just go ahead and tell you how filthy you are, how sinful you are, and you don't do enough for Christ. You don't read the Bible enough, and so on. I don't do that. I don't believe in that stuff. Why? Because that doesn't make good follower of Christ. It makes a religious zealot. It makes a person who is living in some guilt prison, but not a follower of Christ. What is the initial step for the follower of Christ? What does it make or initiate discipleship? Something that we call desire. And I'm not saying that denying yourself is necessarily a good experience, like me living my comfortable home. I'm not saying that carrying cross really is a great experience. That's not what I'm saying. And neither do I say that following Christ necessarily comfortable, but there is desire that helps me to go through these experiences, because I know that at a certain point I will finish my school and they will put the student hat on my head and I will be graduated from school at a certain point. You know what? I'm going to do this. I have temptation to drop out, but I have a desire to finish and finish well. Dietrich Bonhoeffer says, when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. And that's the tension right here. That's the paradox. See, when we are talking about following Jesus, and it speaks about burying or dying for our own self-actualization, self-interest, and so on, it doesn't sound too good for us, right? But in the same time, there is this word desire. You cannot follow Christ. You cannot start dropping or denying yourself if you first don't have a desire to follow Jesus. You know what I discovered? I discovered that religion is very good to force people in denying. You know, I can force you to deny yourself by just, speaking some weird stuff on you, speaking about, hell and fear, mongering and all that other nice stuff. And all of a sudden you're like, yes, I will deny myself. But that's not motivated by desire. And so you can go to monastery, you can be very negative, you become very judgmental, angry sometimes. I'm not sure if you've seen religious people who come to church and they are very judgmental and angry all the time. Now, how do I follow Jesus and still have a lot of joy, a lot of kindness, a lot of just, this life-giving atmosphere around me? People want to be around me despite of my denying myself, despite of my cross, and despite of my decision to follow Christ every day of my life. Well, you know what? I don't feel very good because I have to follow Jesus. These people go to bar, they live wherever they want, they pick up girls every night, and I can't because I'm follower Jesus. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm gladly do that. I'm happy to do that. And I used to be like that. I'm like, you know what, all these people, they live, they're happy, they just, have all these relationships, and you know what, because I'm a follower of Christ, I can't. This is not a follower of Christ. Why? Because, first of all, you never had a desire. So everything starts with desire. I need to see, and I will let you know what desire comes from later. But first I want to introduce you to these three most important realities of Christian life. Deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. This is the undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate in Christian life. Now, let's focus on deny themselves. What it is that we are talking about. And if you've been to school and you took Psychology 101, you probably learn about Maslow's pyramid of priorities, right? First, we need to have safety, then we need to satisfy our basic needs, and at the top of it is self-actualization. And in fact, in this culture, we are basically conditioned by this worldview. We are talking about self-actualization, self-fulfillment, we say. Now, this is the opposite. This kind of worldview is opposite of Jesus' teaching. He says, if you desire to follow me, forget about self-actualization. Why? Because you need to deny yourself. You need to, first step, deny. It's not like you deny yourself of certain things. Like, okay, because I'm Christian, I'm not gonna drink alcohol. I deny myself of alcohol. That's not what I'm talking about. he says you need to deny yourself. It's like you need to divorce yourself. You need to forget about yourself. If you deny yourself, in other words, somebody offends you and you don't get angry because you denied yourself already. If somebody did something wrong wronged you, you don't get offended. Why? Because you denied yourself. And I remember many times, even in church, we have a lot of offenses sometimes. People get offended because somebody did not congratulate you with certain achievements, did not say happy birthday to you, did not properly greet you, and so on, and you get offended. That's not denying yourself. Denying yourself is like, you do whatever you want to me, I already divorced myself. I am not living, but Christ lives in me. That's denying yourself. Now, I mentioned this before, but to illustrate this point, because this is a very difficult point for us to understand, what denying ourselves really means. So let me give you this. I used this example or illustration before, but because it so nicely describes this point of denying yourself, I am going to go ahead and use it again. I'm going to read the paragraph from Juan Carlos Ortiz. Not Juan, but Juan Carlos Ortiz book that he writes about Revelation 3:15. Remember, Jesus says that because you were not hot or cold, I'm going to spit you out. And so he takes this verse and he gives an illustration or explanation what it means. So I'm going to read it to you in its entirety so that you understand what denial means. Listen, let's look at what Jesus said in Revelation. I know thy works, that thou art not neither cold nor hot. I would thou were cold or hot. So then, because thou art lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. And he continues, excuse me for this illustration, but it comes from Jesus himself. What things do we vomit? Things that won't digest. If something is digested, it doesn't come back up. Vomited people are people who refuse to be digested by the Lord Jesus Christ. Any digestion means getting lost. You're finished. Your life ends. You're transformed into Jesus. You are unmistakably associated with him. Here in Argentina, we have very good steaks. Let's imagine that the steak comes to my stomach and the gastric juices come along to dissolve it. They say to the steak, good evening, how are you? And the steak replies, fine, what do you want? Well, we have come to dissolve you, to transform you into Juan Carlos. And suppose the steak says, oh no, wait a minute, it's enough that he ate me, but to disappear completely? No, I am in his stomach, but I want to stay steak. I don't want to lose my individuality. I want to maintain my steak citizenship. So, there is a fight. Suppose the steak wins, and the gastric juices let him remain a steak in my stomach. Very soon, that steak will be vomited out. But if the gastric juices win the fight, the steak loses its personality and becomes me. Before I ate the steak, it was an unknown cow behind the hill. Nobody paid any attention to it. But now, because it's the soul, it gets to write a book. It's part of me. It's no longer just a steak, it's Juan Carlos Ortiz. That's what happens when we let Jesus digest us. We lose ourselves, but we become part of Him. We don't stay lukewarm, half in and half out. We're either all in, digested, or we are spit out. That's what it means, drop it. That's what it means, denying themselves. That's what it means to forget about your self-interest. That's what Christians don't understand. Wait a second. You mean to lose my personality, my individuality, my aspirations, my plans, my everything else? I know that the first thing in our Christian walk is to deny ourselves and say, Jesus, make it your will be done. Not my will, like Jesus prayed, but your will be done in my life. The first thing. But we cannot do it if we don't have a desire to receive postgraduate degree. In the real life, I guess the good example, maybe not perfect, but the good example of denying yourself would be a mom and a child. Those of you who are moms know what I'm talking about. When you deny yourself sleep, when you deny yourself certain things in life, comfort, and the first thing that you do when the child screams, you run, you forget about the fact that you didn't sleep enough. You forget about the fact that your figure is not perfect anymore. You forget about the fact that you don't take care about, like for example, you don't buy yourself a clothes, but when your child comes to you and says, Mom, I want to have this $400 shoes, you're like, yeah, I will buy you. And yourself, you buy from a Payless shoe for $9.99. That's called denying, and you don't even think about this. You do it gladly for your child. That's a good example of denying yourself for Jesus. Now, Swiss Reformed theologian says, Karl Barth says, self-denial does not mean a cold renunciation of life. Like, okay, I'm gonna ask it. I want to refuse everything, deny everything. But a deep and joyful, that's the key point, acceptance of the fact that we are not the center of the world. It's not about me. I thought it's all about me, but I figured that it's all about Jesus. Jesus, how do I live my life to worship you, to glorify you, to bring you glory? And for this week, or as a result of this sermon today, if you can make a decision, it's a progress, of course, but if I can make a decision, God, this week, how can I practically deny myself in my spiritual walk? I want to be like you. I want to have desire of following you, and I just learned that in order for me to follow you, I need to deny myself. Now, with that, I want to move to the graduate degree, and that is picking up your cross or drag it. Now, this is a little bit. Some people think that denying yourself and picking up your cross is the same thing. No, it's a little bit different. What's interesting about this verse is this. Jesus is saying to his disciples about the cross at the time when the cross was not even a thing to discuss because Jesus hasn't died yet. I mean, people knew generally what cross was. People knew that cross was a disgusting, terrible punishment instrument at that time. Because Jews, being conquered by Romans, they were witnessing of Romans punishing rebellious people, rebels, by crucifying them on the cross. At a certain point, hundreds of Pharisees were crucified who rebelled against Romans' rule and were placed on the side of the roads for everybody to see. So in Jewish mind at that point, and so that's why people don't understand sometimes when people say, when we preach about picking up the cross, we take this concept in today's terms. We're like, oh, well, picking up the cross, that means that I have to endure some hardship in life. That's not what Jesus is talking about. You know how people say, well, my husband is my cross. That's not the cross. That's a hardship that you legitimately have. I know that your husband is difficult, but it's not the cross that he's talking about. He is talking about completely, imagine for a second you go into that context. Jesus has not died. He was not crucified. Nobody knows that he would be crucified yet. People don't understand, disciples don't understand the meaning of cross. They just know in that context that the cross is a horrific way to die. In other words, that's for Romans to say, because you were a rebel, we are going to put a sign of our power and authority upon your back that you have to carry to your capital punishment, to your destination when you're going to die. That's what cross was associated with. So from our perspective today, Jesus says, because you were a rebel, because you rebel against God and live for your self-actualization all your entire life, pursue happiness. Now you pick up the cross and go to the place of punishment, capital, death. You is going to be crucified. That's what they heard, disciples did. And the funny thing about this is, Jesus says, pick up your cross. Two things. Number one, you need to pick up, again, we are talking about desire to follow. So it's not like, see, your husband that you thought it was a cross. Well, you picked him up. Let's just talk about some other stuff. Like, for example, you experience sickness, right? And you're like, well, I'm going through this sickness, that's my cross. That's not your cross because you did not pick up that sickness. It came to you. You need to rebuke that sickness. That's not a cross. Cross is something that you pick up voluntarily. And Apostle Paul is talking about cross every day. In fact, Luke, this same place in Luke says that you need to pick up your cross daily. And so that's talk about your willingful, almost joyful picking up the cross. And number two, it speaks about your cross. In other words, you cannot carry my cross. I cannot carry your cross. Sometimes people come to me and try to put their cross on me. And I'm refusing vehemently because I'm saying, no, don't put your stuff upon me. I have my cross that I pick up. Your cross is for you to carry. Now, what does it mean to pick up your cross? Willingly. To illustrate this, remember this story when rich ruler came to Jesus and he says, look, what do I have to do to inherit the eternal life? And Jesus says, well, you just follow the commandments and you will be all right. And the young fellow says, well, yes, I did. I honor my father and mother. I treat my neighbors right. I did everything from the childhood. Jesus looked at him, and the Bible says, loved him Some people think that you being decent is worthless. This guy was decent, and Jesus looked at him, and Jesus like, wow. I was driving today on the highway, going through my home, and you know when you get on the ramp to the highway, some people pigs were driving and throw their Taco Bell bags of garbage right there. Like they eat and throw under themselves. And I'm like, who can do that? What kind of animal mind that you have to eat and go under yourself? Not decent. But this guy was decent. And Jesus looked at him and like, wow. He, instead of dropping stuff on the road, he actually picked it up and put it in trash. He was kind. He was nice. Jesus loved him. And then Jesus says, one thing that I have for you to do is to pick up your cross. But that's not what he says. He says to sell your possession and follow me. See, for the young rich ruler, his cross was his possession. For you, possession might be nothing. Like in my case, I don't put much value in possession. So I can have whatever I want. You cannot bribe me with possession. I can give up everything in the world. God knows it. You can put much money in my hands, it doesn't stick to my hands. Some people put me a lot of money, gave me a lot of money, and I don't even sign a paper. They know that I'm not going to use them. I don't care. I don't care. But I have my own cross that I need to carry. This young ruler had his cross. Let me give you this story that illustrates it probably better than what I just said. There is a story about this plantation, and white guy was a plantation owner, and there was a lot of black slaves working on the plantation. And so this guy would come and see them working in the plantation, and there was this young guy, a slave. You know, it's not fun to be a slave. But something about this guy was unique. He was always joyful. He was always singing. He was always glad. And so this plantation owner looked at him and he says, what do you have? Why are you always joyful? And he says, well, that's because I know Jesus Christ, and I know that I have eternal life, and I know that I am a child of God, and I know that I know my eternal destiny. And then the plantation owner says, what do I have to do to have that, what you have? And the slave says, well, it's simple. Go home, put your Sunday white suit, and come back to us and work with us in the mud. And so the plantation owner scoffed and left. But after a while, this thought did not give him rest, and so he came back to see his slaves working in the plantation, and he again saw this guy was working and singing and full of joy. And so the plantation owner came to him again, and he says, no, seriously, what do I have to have? What do you have to do to have that, what you have? And the guy says, I told you, get your Sunday white suit, come back here and work with us in the mud, and you're going to have it. And so the plantation owner just left angry. He was like, what are you saying? I mean, and as time passed, and he just didn't have peace about this. So he came to the plantation one more time, the same scenario, and he approached the guy and he says, no, just, okay, so whatever it is, tell me and I'm gonna do it. And he says, I already told you. I'm already told you, get your suit. Come here. Half in the mud, half feet, knee deep in the mud, and you will be You will have what I have. And the plantation owner says, I'll do it. I'll do it. And the slave looked at him to the face, smiled, and said, you don't have to now, because you are ready. Do it. It's not your cross anymore. It's interesting that each of us have personalized crosses. And it's the instrument of death when you are not ready to part with the thing that separates you from being a follower of Christ. Whatever that might be. That might be your comfort, that may be your unforgiveness, that may be your rage or anger, resentment that you're carrying, anything, your earthly desires, your selfish ambitions. And at that point, Christ says, well, you want to have this selfish ambition to be realized in your life, put it on the cross, carry it. And at a certain point, you're like, well, I'm ready to do so. Maybe God says, okay, now that you're ready, you don't really have to. See, it's not about having riches and things. It's about riches and things not having you. That's all what I'm saying. But I want to finish with this last point. And by the way, it's true, like Spurgeon said, it's either having a cross and having a crown, or no cross, no crown. It works like this. This interaction with Jesus happened when Peter learned that Jesus is going to die on the cross. And he says to Jesus, no way, you're not going to go to the cross. And Jesus says, get behind me, Satan, because you represent Christianity without the cross. You try to be graduated by skipping certain steps. Get behind me, Satan. I am going to the cross. You cannot be follower of Christ without carrying the cross. And so I'm finishing with this. He says, once you have a desire, and the question is, how do I have a desire? Once you deny yourself, dissolve in Christ, once you pick up your cross, and you pick up, I'm not going to put a cross on you, you pick up on yourself. Yesterday, I came here to church to just do certain things, and I see Corina came with this bucket of cleaning supplies and stuff, and I'm looking like, what are you doing here? I didn't ask you to do anything. I didn't tell you that we have a need or anything. We don't have any need. But she picked up the cross voluntarily. I didn't put it on you. You did. Carry your cross. And follow me. This is the last point. Following me, sometimes people don't understand because we have this word mistranslated, and sometimes we have these Twitters and Facebooks when we say follow me, follow me. That's not what Jesus is saying. Follow me in original language sounds like walk besides me. Let's go together, side by side, so that we can have fellowship. It's not like sometimes people think that following Jesus is like going behind Jesus. Maybe to a certain degree that's the meaning of it, but In this particular case, if you look in the original, it says walk with me. Not necessarily behind me, with me, because I am your teacher, you're my apprentice. I am showing you how to live life how I did. And you can't really learn if you follow behind me. Walk with me here. But how does it, if I follow Jesus and I need to deny myself and pick up my cross, other than that I cannot go into the postgraduate program. I didn't meet the requirements, prerequisites, if you will. How do I get motivated? Well, it's simple, because if you read the last two verses after this conversation, verses 25 and 26, Jesus says this: "For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me will find it." Do you see the promise here? Now he continues, "What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to what they have done." Graduation. Jesus says, look, yes, I know that going on vacation sucks. I know that you want to stay in your house and die there comfortably. I read the story about this couple, famous artist. What's his name? Hickman or something? The artist that recently died with his wife in the house and nobody even knew that they died. It was in the news. What is it? Eugene Hartman. Yeah? And they have a lot of inheritance, or they'll have a lot of assets. But to die with all these millions of dollars and assets in the house by themselves, and children did not even contact him. The news says, in 2 months nobody contacted him. Doesn't really sound like a great way to go. What Jesus is saying is this: look, if you try to live your life seeking self-actualization, all what you will find is emptiness. There is no life there. But if you lose your life in the spiritual stomach, being transformed by Christ, all of a sudden you will find richness of life, because I am life. That's what he's saying here. And this is the desire part. This is why we went this route, and we deny ourselves. We pick up our crosses every day. When you get off your bed in the morning, you say, Jesus, when I step on the floor, help me to be, right at that very moment, let me pick up my cross. And also steer my feet today to follow you, not me, not my desires, but you. Why? Because it's like, think about this way. I'm done, but let me give you this illustration. Picture a nice river that goes through the valleys and meadows with nice still waters. And a lot of trees and a lot of animals and birds are coming there to get water, to drink water. And on the banks of the river, you have a grass, nice lush grass, growing because of the moisture. And as you go further from the river, everything is like a desert. Everything dies because there is no moisture in there. So the example is this. For me, let's say I am a farmer. I can go and build my house away from the river somewhere, and then try to bring the water from the river to my farm to water my plants, building these channels and all these different ways how to bring. Maybe I will take my buckets and bring the water to my farm. Or I can say, you know what, river is river, right there. So I'm going to go ahead and build my life on the banks of the river. The water is right there. Whatever I put in the soil is gonna grow. You have a choice here. I hate going on a vacation, but I do have a desire to go on the vacation because I know that I will survive living my comfortable home. I will survive carrying my bags, heavy bags from the trunk of my car back and forth. I will survive even this difficult travel. But at the end, I will have a reward spending time. And I never go to on a vacation without my children. Jesus says, look, I know, you can't even try denying yourself. It's not going to work. Before first you're developing this vision and the beauty of life with Him who is the source of life. That's why we don't teach in church, well, you know what, you have to do this, you have to pick up the cross, you have to read the Bible. No, that's not what we do. First, you need to realize how great, how beautiful, how bountiful, how precious is our Lord Jesus Christ. And then everything comes as a result of it.